Thanks for coming to hang out with us today. Ruck Up Buttercup is a podcast hosted by Deployed Love. We chat about real things that military families deal with and help you to love the call to action. So you know the drill. Ruck Up Buttercup. Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope your January has been going great, that your goals that you talked about in our last podcast are continuing to go in the right direction. And again, like we talked about, if that's not the case, just take a step back and then get back on to those goals. But we are recording our second episode for this month. Today we have another great girl who has joined us from our listening community, and she's excited to be here with us today. And we're going to talk about kind of an underrepresented part of the military community, and that is the girlfriends who are part of the military community, still have to deal with all the things we deal with, but sometimes don't get like the benefits and the support that they do. So we wanted to bring someone on. Kaitlyn, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Just kind of tell us a little bit about you, your life through the military so far, and how it's been treating you, I guess.
Sure. So my name is Kaitlyn. I am originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I moved here to be with my boyfriend who is in the Air Force. He's stationed at Shaw Air Force Base. I moved here October of 2021, and he's been here for over 4 years. I joined him, and it's been definitely an awakening experience. When I first moved here, I was a DoD civilian working on the base. So I worked in the Arts and Crafts Center, and I got really firsthand experience about the military lifestyle right off the gate, right out of the jump, and it's been on the ride since. It's been about a year and a half. So loving every day.
For sure. How'd you guys meet then? So if you guys were in different places.
Yeah, so I've actually known him since I was 4. He is from the same hometown as me. My mom went to high school with his dad, his mom, his stepdad, his aunt, kind of everybody, small town problems. We dated in high school, and then he was going into the military, and I wasn't sure if I wanted that, and we broke up, and then we reconnected. We've always been friends. I've been very close to this family my whole life, and reconnected, and then I moved down here and been the same ever since.
That's cute. It's interesting to see those who have been together a really long time and those who meet towards in that transition. You see a lot of girlfriends who are either going to be like, they just met them, they're going off the basic. And then you see the girlfriends who have been with them like a couple years or for a really, really long time before the transition into the military life. I said the same thing. I met my husband in high school.
Me too.
And I was like, I don't want to marry a soldier. I grew up military. I was like, never, ever am I going to marry a soldier. I hated it. And then, that was 16 years ago, 17 years ago. And, I think that helps build a really strong connection when you have that kind of connection beforehand and you're willing to go through those steps all together.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really, I definitely feel like I missed out on certain things, and I regret definitely looking back saying, darn, I wish I was part of your life when this stuff was happening, to know how you got to this point in the military. But at the same time, I'm glad that, we had that time apart, because I felt like I became the person I needed to be, and I was able to establish myself before reconnecting with him. And I hope and believe he was able to do the same. So I think it worked out for us in the long run. Sometimes I still regret it.
No, I think I love that because that's very similar to my story, but I did have the chance to kind of establish myself, I guess, because my husband and I met in high school. We've been friends through high school. We never dated until later, but he had done basic training. When he came back over Christmas break is when we started hanging out, and we're like, oh, let's give this a try. So I did the girlfriend thing through AIT, and through 6 to 9 months, no, I think it was about 9 months of his first duty station. So, and that was long to distance, very long distance, because he was in Hawaii. Definitely learned from that. But I think the fact that we knew each other, and it was kind of a different perspective because I didn't get to meet him when he was already in the military. I knew him and got to see how he had grown up and changed. When he came back from basic training and we started talking again, I was like, this is not the same goofy kid that I used to hang out with. He has grown into himself, has learned to be mature and to be, follow rules to whatever extent. Yes, we're married now. I'm like, was he? You get a different perspective because if you went through the whole basic training with him, it would also be different because you would have been just like very, very attached, and you didn't have that chance for him to just kind of develop on his own and you to develop on your own and realize that connection was there afterwards.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that.
Yeah. It's different because that's how we were. I was with Jeremy when he went through basic. He didn't go right away after graduating high school. He did go to Virginia Military Institute for a little over a year and then just decided that he just didn't want to do that. He just wanted to enlist and, start his career in the military. And so we went through basic, we went through AIT, we went through jump school. And it was really weird because we had been together for going on 2.5 years at that point when that happened. And so it was really weird having that only communication of like letters. I mean, like I still have his handwritten letters from basic and AIT, and then not getting to talk to him every single day and talk to him about I was in school, so finals and things like that. It was really, really, really frustrating. And I can see how if you are going through that situation now, it's very different because we're so used to the technology. We're so used to having cell phones and social media. That's still not allowed. I mean, I could be wrong. Like I said, it's been 16 years since he went to basic, but having constant contact with someone and then going from 100% to 0% can feel weird. And they're going through a lot. Like they're going to be telling you like your girlfriend's cheating on you. I mean, my husband said that. Like he's just like, they're telling me that you're cheating on me. And he's like, I know I don't believe it, but it makes me worry because you're at school and you're going to games and you're going to parties and
living two different lives.
It's two different lives. And you said you definitely resented things, and I 100%, like, even though you guys were kind of separated during that time, I felt like I missed out on so much stuff because I was like, I'm not going to parties. I'm not doing that stuff because I'm with you. And, I don't want you to feel that way. I was very cautious about who I hung out with. Like, I had guy friends that I was in class with, but like, I made sure that if I was in a photo with anybody, I was with like other females, and just so he wouldn't get upset, and him knowing that wasn't what was happening, just knowing that someone was like whispering that in his ear, knowing that wasn't what was happening. I just didn't want to give him any, like, I definitely felt like, because we were so young and we went through all that, like it was, we didn't get to really, like, he didn't get to experience college years. So I guess we're kind of in the same boat for me and him. Like, I felt like I didn't really experience college like I should have, but then again, I look back and I'm like, well, he definitely didn't get any college experience. So it's one of those things where I feel like I think it depends on the personality too. And I think it's different when you have someone when you're much older in life. Like we see a lot of people, we talked about this in the last podcast, we see a lot of people going into the military later in their adulthood. So like in their later 20s. And I feel like everyone is at a different stage in that part too. So like, if your girlfriend who's just waiting around, like you have your own life, you have your career, you have all this stuff. And then, eventually you may have to, give those up. And I'm using air quotes. No, I don't know why I'm doing that because no one can see me, but a lot of times we do have to give those things up. So it could feel like you are kind of changing to be that girlfriend.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I came into this so far in. He signed a 6-year contract. So I came in, at almost 5 years into that. And I gave up a lot, I mean, I gave up all of our family with mine and his are all back home. Our friends, I had a career. I didn't go to college in the typical sense. I worked right out of high school. I'm in the marketing graphic design field, and I've always worked in that career. And I've worked really hard to, make a career for myself without having that degree. And I had connections, and I had really my freelance business was growing, my full-time job was growing, and I felt I was in a great place. I had an apartment, I'd worked hard for that. And I wouldn't call it necessarily a sacrifice in the sense of like, I love my life down here. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But at the same time, I gave up a lot. And I have amazing friends down here, and I have great support, and I have a great job now. But it's taken, I said, I moved here in October, so I'm about a little over a year in, and I just now kind of feel like I have that set up back. And even some things are still missing, and so I still need to work on that. But yeah, I mean, no matter what part of stage you join, whether you're a military member or a spouse or a girlfriend, you're gonna have to sacrifice something at some point. That's just the game of the game with the military. And I'm lucky in the sense that I'm not the military member, so I didn't maybe have to give up as much of that off the bat. It was a willing choice. Like I chose to follow this. I chose to follow him. I don't regret it, but it definitely you give up a lot regardless in the military lifestyle.
Have you, so being a spouse, being down there, this might be a little different for us because you said he was in the Air Force. So I know that each branch is a little different. Have you gone through a deployment with him as a girlfriend? Do you guys live together? I guess that should be my question.
Yes.
Do you guys live together? Okay.
Yeah. So when I moved here, he actually bought a house 3 months or 4 months before I moved here. We only moved back in together like 3 or 4 months after reconnecting, but because of our history, it seamlessly kind of transitioned. My lease was ending. He had just bought a house that had room, and we decided it made the most sense at that time for me to move in. So I moved in. We've lived together since, and he was deployed in July. He went to Saudi Arabia, and I was very lucky in the sense that it was only a 4 month deployment. He came home in October. So we went through that together, and then he was deployed to Afghanistan right before COVID, so 2019 and 2020. So he went through all of that by himself. I was with him his last deployment.
How do you
and the TDY for 2 weeks.
Yeah. How do you feel like you've been supported of as a girlfriend? Like, have you had support from military like organizations or anything?
Not
Okay.
the military organizations. Like I said, being that I worked on base for about 6 months when I first moved, I had some connections with some my coworkers who were military spouses, like long-term husbands already retired or whatever. So I had some older friends who kind of took me under their wing. That when he left, I wasn't working there anymore, but I still was in contact with them. But I had no opportunities available to me other than I did know, and I do know my key spouses. One of them I know personally just through some of my freelance business and through my boyfriend's friends. So I felt that I was included in the squadron, like spouses events and groups if I wanted to be. That was about the extent of it from base.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like that's like the major biggest change over the last how many years it's been when I was technically a girlfriend, because we didn't get married right away. We got married a year after his first like year like in service. So he was like went through basic all that and then did a year of service, and then we got married. And he went through a deployment during that time. He deployed to Iraq for 12 months. And usually it's up to command teams to whether or not they include everybody. But I have noticed in the more recent times that they are allowing, because it used to be mothers, fathers, or spouses, and that was it. Like if you were a girlfriend, if you were a fiance or whatever you were, like they would not talk to you, they would not contact you, they would not give you information. And so like it really sucked for me because I had to relay, like I had to get all of my information from my mother-in-law. Like everything went through her, and I just had to wait for her to be kind enough to tell me what was happening, even though we had been together for 4 years. It was one of those things where it was just like, okay, I'm really glad that they've changed that mindset to whoever the soldier wants.
Well, to be fair, I had to go find it.
Right.
Like it was very much like not offered. It wasn't like they came to me. It to give my boyfriend credit, it's not his job to find that. He's new to this also, and he's very much I know what I know kind of mentality just because of his work. And so I had to find those groups, and I don't think if I would have just requested to join the group, even though I knew his squadron, I knew his rank, I could tell him exactly who he was, they would not have accepted me, I don't think, if I didn't personally know somebody who invited me into it. If that makes sense.
And like I said, I don't know how the Air Force does it. I know that in the Army, so it used to be called FRG Center, Family Readiness Group. In recent years, they've changed that to SFRG, which is Soldier Family Readiness Group, because single soldiers who were technically married were not getting the same information to relay to those people that they cared about. And so now it's, it's a training, like anytime before a deployment, things like that, they're supposed to be like told like, hey, like, make sure you have the roster, who your next of kin rostered point is. Obviously you can only pick one, so you have to make sure you choose who that person is. But I mean, if you want your girlfriend, your fiance on there, you can do that. Just, make sure you communicate with your family members that this is who you have on that list. And it's interesting because like, I feel like our soldiers don't really think about it. They don't think about having that information ready for you guys, whether you're a spouse or a girlfriend.
Yeah, I think that also comes down to is when you do get married, they go through the whole like in processing part, and that's where they really push them into that, like that family group stuff, like getting them that information, saying this is when the meetings are, this is what's important about this. And as just having a girlfriend, he maybe just kind of wants to keep that, that's his personal life and this is his work life. And it kind of is a different situation when they're in that situation. And I also know there is some within the military community that look at FRG and they're like, nah, we're not going to participate. And they just aren't interested in getting their spouse
That's
involved.
kind of
Like,
us. We're very on the back end of things. Like we're very on the outskirts. You know, we have our people. We try not to get overly involved. We don't have kids. Not to say we have a sense of reality, but like, we're very outskirts of all the base activities. We don't participate in a lot of things. But at the same time, like I was not his next of kin. I live in his house with him. I was not power of attorney. Like, God forbid something were to happen to him, I would have no rights and no responsibilities to anything. And that's a scary thought. And luckily we had communication and we could able to text and all that. And luckily I'm close with his family and they would never do anything to hurt me. But death changes people and you don't know how you're going to act. You don't know how people are going to act. And you just never know what could happen. So it was really scary for me, like, knowing I don't get information first, knowing I have no rights to the house that I live in. Like my whole life here could get uprooted if something were to happen to him because I don't have any rights. That was a hard thing.
That is a scary thought because I kind of had similar thoughts. I'm not going to know anything. I was already kind of had a rocky relationship with his mom at the time. And so it could definitely put a strain on relationships, especially if you are counting on that other person to relay that information to you or vice versa.
Yeah. And like I said, we have great friends and most of the husbands, they're all married, do the same thing my boyfriend does. They know each other from work at the beginning. But then when you deploy, my boyfriend moved shops. So what information I was getting, like you have the whole OPSEC and all that, and information I was getting from my friends about what their husbands were telling them was contradicting what my boyfriend was saying by nobody's fault, but the fact that they're not in the same boat.
I was gonna say, that's military communication. That's always gonna be the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then like coming home, for instance, so I don't have base access anymore. After I left my job, I didn't have base access. So his homecoming changed, as everybody knows, in the military time never stays the same. But when the time for his homecoming was supposed to be like a Saturday morning, we have some good friends who weren't deployed that were going to take me onto base and like, you know, be there and support me for the homecoming. And then the time got moved to like 1 a.m. and my friend's pregnant and I couldn't ask. I was like, I can't ask them to do this. I'm sure they absolutely would have. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but I was like, I can't ask them to take me onto base for this. And then it turns out like we could have gotten my name on a list, have access for the homecoming, but we didn't do it because I had people getting me on. So then it was like a last minute, like contacting the first shirt and talking to the key spouses and be like, can I still get on this list because the time's changing? And it was just like a whole chaotic thing. And then the stress of the day comes. My friends and I all hang out. We go to base together in our own cars. And I don't know if I'm on the list. So it's like, am I going to get onto base right now to see him? Or is he going to have to walk to the visitor center and I'm going to pick him up there? It's just that you never know. They can change it at any point. So like you have no security in the sense of if you need something, you can get something.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that because like here at Bragg, anybody can get on base. They just have to go to the visitor center. They don't have to have like a service member to sign them in. And I kind of always forget that at like smaller bases, like especially like you either have to have a service member with you to get you a pass or you have to have an ID.
You have to have an ID or you have to have a like pre-signed pass. So like I did have at one point, like they were able to like call in a pass for me and I was able to go get it and then go on to base, but it's limited. So yeah.
Struggle for sure. I was gonna say, I remember being that girl's girlfriend, and when we went to visit, we stayed at the hotel in Hawaii when we got engaged, the trip that I came out to visit him there, and I couldn't go anywhere because I was on base, and if I left base, I was not going to be able to get back to the hotel. I couldn't go to the commissary and buy myself a snack. I couldn't go to the shopette and buy myself a snack. Like I couldn't go anywhere. I was just like, I'm here in a hotel all day long while he's at shift.
But I could when I first moved. That's the other hard thing is when I moved here and I first like 6 months, I had a CAC.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't experience that because I still had a military ID because I was still technically a military kid because my parents were still active duty. I didn't even think about that, like how hard that would be if you didn't have any access to the military on how that would be.
Yeah. So I couldn't go to base. We don't shop at the commissary anyway, but I couldn't go if I needed to. I couldn't go to the shopette. We had like town hall meetings before they deployed. and my boyfriend was on swing shift, so he was overnights. So if he was at work, I couldn't go to that meeting if I wanted to because I couldn't get onto base. But I had all those resources when I first moved. So I was used to getting onto base. The Air Force pretty much just recently, when I was working there, switched over to civilian DoD members can shop at the commissary and the shop ed, and they loosened the restrictions. So I did have access to more things, but then I lost it all. So it was like, oh, do you want to go do this? Well, I can if you take me. I can't go myself. And I don't need it often. I don't find myself missing that access. But when he was deployed, I did.
So you've said that you guys have been together for quite a while too. So is there a reason that you guys have decided to just kind of keep it in that section? I know that that's probably a lot of why the FRD has changed, because I think a lot of people choose to just have relationships where they don't have to be married in order to be together. But I know also on the military side, like the reason ours was rushed is because we needed that access. We needed to be able to move together. We needed to be able to live together.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing is I don't know about the Air Force, but for the Army, it's pretty much required. Like a single soldier has to live in the barracks until they hit a certain rank or if they're married. So like that was us. Like, we had been together for years and, we were like, oh, let's wait until like, you graduate college. And it's like, well, you're stationed here at home. Like, because he ended up getting stationed here at Bragg and I was still here. And I was just like, let's just get married so we can at least get an apartment together. Like, you don't have to live in the barracks. I don't have to live at home because, we're trying to save money or whatnot. So I definitely think that, I know that's why there's such a heavy presence of people getting married so young is so that the soldiers can get out of the barracks.
It was absolutely that for me because he was in Hawaii. We hadn't gotten engaged and gotten married as quickly as we did, I would have been spending the entire tour alone back home living my own life. Like, we would have been two totally different lives that we'd had to just continue to live because the only way for me to stay in Hawaii was for us to get married so that he could get housing, because I couldn't afford a house in Hawaii. No, I mean, I don't think anybody that's 19 can afford that. So like, it was either we marry really, really quickly and we just get the process going, or we just live separately. So
Yeah, so in the Air Force, as my knowledge is limited, I will be the first person to say I do not know all the military rules. I haven't tried, I haven't even conquered it. But you can move out of the dorms at a certain point. I don't remember what the rank is, but you don't have to be married. That I know. So before I moved here, before we bought the house, he was living in apartments. He was off base pretty much as soon as he was able to. In regards to marriage, I think, we're just taking our time. We're both 24, pretty young in the non-military world. For all that stuff. And yeah, and you're not military. I mean, for military, we're old at this point for not being married. But it's at the point I think where we moved in together so quickly after reconnecting that I just think we're, enjoying each stage of our relationship now as best we can because we didn't get to experience. I mean, we were long distance for a few months, but that's nothing. I'm ready to get married. So
waiting.
Hopefully this year we get an engagement. I don't know. I just think we're taking our time and we don't want to rush anything. We did have a conversation regarding when I first moved here, there was a list coming up for Korea for a year was happening around that time. We were pretty sure he was going to end up on that list just due to the ranks they needed and the time he's been at Shaw. And we did have a conversation that, if he were to get stationed somewhere for a year or more, we were looking at possibly getting courthouse married and announcing like an engagement, but being legally married for military purposes. But other than that, we haven't really thought about it. After the last deployment, I was like, we're so stupid at this point. Like, we're missing out on all the separation pay. Like, that part. And we don't have kids. So, I mean, we're not losing anything on that. So, I just think we're just taking our time and I'm ready. It's not yet, but he's been at Shaw this whole time. So the question now is
on a move at some point soon.
I would think so. His contract ends in August. We don't know right now. So he came in for 6 years and the conversation was always, I'm not staying in for a full 20. I'm doing it to get my, experience, and then I'm going to get out and do other things. And then he made staff sergeant rank. And I don't know, again, not know the military, but at a certain point, I know you can extend for a year with certain stipulations. I think he's going to extend for a year at least, just to get a sense of his new responsibilities and the job in the new rank and just get a feel for it and then go from there. He's talked about 20. a little bit, like 20 years, but I don't know because everything changes so
It's
quickly.
always
And
changing. It's never not
It
going to
changes
change.
so many times.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think
We
I
stayed in
so
so much longer than we expected to, and we're out. So it's hard to
our
say.
change, I was gonna say, like, ours has changed at least 5 times this year. So, or well, like in
yeah.
2022, like at least 5 times. I mean, now my husband is to the point where like he will do 20, but like he was at the point where like, okay, but what's my next step in for the next 5 years
Yeah.
until I hit
Well,
20?
he was looking at, so my boyfriend's an F-16 maintenance. So he loves working on the planes. He loves working with the jets. He loves the maintenance. And as I'm sure you guys are familiar with, the higher rank you get, the more office responsibilities you have and more like in charge versus like hands-on
Doing the
work.
job.
And he loves doing the job. He likes working with his hands. He loves the physical part of the job. So for him, he doesn't want troops. He doesn't want like to deal with people. He wants to do his work. And so I think that was the motivation for him wanting to get out so he could do the maintenance in a different sense. But as again, I'm sure you know, the real world's scary. I mean, the lack of security and not knowing what's going to happen, and like you don't know if you're going to have to pay, you don't know if you're going to have a job, the housing, all that. So I think that kind of held him back a little bit from making that decision to get out because he was looking at skill bridging, but his last deployment kind of like they didn't cross over, but it kind of like hit right up when he would need to skill bridge, and he wasn't prepared for the skill bridge when he got back to get out for that 6 months. So that kind of switched things up a little bit for him in that sense. But if he extends for a year, he'll be in for 7. And then say he signs another contract for 4 years, then he'll be in for like 11, 12 years.
And
At
then you
that
might
point,
as well
he then
finish.
says, that's like, yeah, he's like, I might as well finish my 20 then at that point because I've been here for so long. And that's fair.
Yeah.
But I have a very like good mindset about like him choosing when I chose to be with him, I knew he was in the military. I knew this was his life. I knew this was his career, and I didn't know he wanted to get out. So because I came in when I did, I came with the mindset of this was your life. The decision has to come from you. I'll support you. I'll give you my opinion. Do I want to stay in for 20? No. Like, do I want that to be our life? No. But at the end of the day, if that's what you choose, I can't be mad at you for that or hold it against you because I knew what I was coming into. And so I'll give him my opinion. We really want property. We want land. We want to build a home. We want a homestead. And we want like a small farm. We can't do that if he stays in. I want kids eventually. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Stay-at-home moms, God bless them. I don't want that. I need to get out of my house. But I feel like knowing my personality and knowing like my livelihood, if he stays in, I feel like I'm going to kind of force myself into being a stay-at-home mom for the stability purposes of my kids. And so it's just more sacrifices that I'll make if I have to. I'm willing to, but I still think our life plan doesn't align with the military. But again, at the end of the day, I can't hold that against him because this was his decision first, not
And
mine.
it is, you were saying, the real world is scary. And all 3 of our
Yeah.
husbands went in right after high school. This is all they know. Like, that is their life. And I know that Dustin, he looked into getting jobs outside of the military community when he got out. He's been out for 8 years now, I think. It's been a while. But like, he was so scared. And I know that was a lot of it was like, I know I'm qualified. And they would say he was overqualified because of his experience. And that was super frustrating. And he applied to so many places before he got out, before he finally was just like, nope, I'm going civilian contract. It's the Army. We still play the exact same game,
Yeah.
the deployments and all that. And so we never really got away from it. And I don't regret it because we're here now and I love Germany and I had this opportunity to come back to Germany, but we definitely had other plans. We were fully set on moving to Oregon. We were fully set on like living that outdoor life, potentially even doing camper life kind of thing. And it just didn't happen because it was just that comfort zone. And going back to like, this is my experience. And he's very specialized in what he does. Like his intel job is very, very, very specifically military. So it would have been really difficult. So I understand that. Like we definitely had different plans for our life when we knew he was getting out, and we're just kind of here in the same thing, doing the same thing.
And like my boyfriend when he joined, I could be wrong, but I don't think he saw the military as a stepping stone. He saw it as like, I don't want to do college. I want to do a skill trade, the military makes most sense. And I don't think anybody at 18, 19 thinks about this that far in advance, but I don't think he knew if he wanted to stay in or not. In regards, I'm not from a military family. My grandfather served in the war, but Glenn was out. But my brother, who just is graduating high school this year, is going into the Air Force Academy, and he's decided to serve the minimum you need for the academy to get his pilot training, because he then wants to leave the military with the pilot training. So he's thought through, okay, the military is a stepping stone. Versus for us, I don't think my boyfriend knew whether it was a stepping stone or a career. You know, he was like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to do it. Great. Now we're at an age and a point where it's not just him. And now we have to make a decision of, is this going to be a stepping stone? And in what direction? Are you going to go maintenance? Are you going to go, aircraft maintenance? Are you going to change your certification? So you're trained to do F-16 maintenance. Are you going to change your certification to carrier plane maintenance? Are you going to do recreational? Like, what are we doing with it? Then there's plenty of options. You just have to narrow it down,
which leads to more training and more time in. And yeah.
And before that, before he got deployed, I think it was, when he was looking at skill bridging jobs, and the ones that his friends who were getting out were getting hired into suddenly stopped hiring. So he had like 2 or 3 jobs. He was like, oh, friends A, B, C, and D went here and here and here, and they're getting paid great. Cool, I'm going to look into that in about 6 months to a year. Oh, shoot, now they're not hiring. I don't know what other options I have, and I'm deployed. So I can't look at options. I can't do that. So now I'm going to stay in, and now the military is throwing a new rank at me. They're throwing higher pay. They're throwing this. I might as well extend. And I think it's just now convenience to extend. I think extending for a year is a great decision with his new rank, but I don't know about the whole.
Honestly, that is like a very common thing that happens. Have that, like, especially those who come in, like, I'm going to do medical field and then, go like do medical training, go into the medical field, pilots go into pilots. A lot of them have that idea, but then they find that it's very difficult to get a job in the civilian market. I mean, I know Jeremy's cousin's husband, he was a pilot, and he had a really, really hard time getting a commercial job. He ended up having to go back into the reserves, and he didn't want to do that, but he ended up going into the reserves. And, he does get to fly, but it's not exactly how he wanted it. He didn't get his dream job. He had, you pretty much have to start at the bottom. You've been in your career for, depending on how long you have to be in service for that position, sometimes you have to start at the bottom. And a lot of them are just nope, I'm just going to stay in, keep going. And, if I hit 20, then I don't have to finish, I don't have to go into the civilian
factor too. It is something that you're already in. You're already doing it.
It's 100% a convenience factor.
Yeah, my brother's Air Force too. He's air traffic control. And so his idea was originally, because he didn't get in until he was in his mid-20s, was I'm going to do this so that I get the free training, and then I'm going to go civilian. And then they sent him to Italy, and he was like, oh, I love Italy, so I'm going to re-enlist and stay in Italy. And now it's I don't know if that's even something he's even considering anymore, because he's also now had to do the stresses of having to learn Italian to run the air thing. And it's a lot more than he expected, I think, after he did it for a while longer.
I think the decision would be a lot easier for both of us if he had been sent somewhere or changed duty stations more than once. He's been at Shaw his entire time. He went to tech school. He was in Nevada. He was in Texas, and then he's at Shaw. He hasn't left Shaw. He's TD wide for 2 weeks. He's deployed. He's there at PCS. He's never gone overseas. So I think if he had that experience in the 6 years he had already been in, I think the decision would be a lot easier. I think he would be like, I can't stand this about the military, but I love this.
Is that 6 years included his training?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think so. He signed a 6-year contract, so I assume so.
Okay.
I think that's part of the contract.
I mean, I know Air Force is very different too. Every MOS and every branch is different in terms of how many years you're at a duty station before you move. Most Army units, it's 3 years. So,
we definitely know.
Yeah.
We definitely know we've been here for a while. Well, he's been here for a while. We know that. We don't know why, but again, we don't want that. We want to move. I think if he were to get orders, you asked about marriage, the whole while we're waiting. I think if he were to get orders, that would push the process, because I'm not moving myself again. I'm not doing it alone. I'm not doing it on my own dime again.
It depends on where he goes, because there are going to be locations where like if you got orders to Alaska, like
You have
I
to,
mean, that
yeah,
would
you
have to
have to
be
get married. Yeah.
100% on your dime. I mean, obviously you can move to Alaska if
Yeah.
you want to move to Alaska, but like in terms of anything, like you have to be on his orders. It's considered an
Yeah.
Oak duty station.
Yeah.
It's definitely the lore, like, you know, the insurance, the housing allowance, things like that. Like it's definitely young people join and they're like, okay, let's get married. And then, you know, sometimes marriages work, sometimes they don't. And so I feel like that's a huge stigma for the military because, you know, you do have so many super young spouses. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think my youngest is 18, like right now.
But at the same time, it's like maybe they don't want to get married. But again, like the military accidentally forces you into
Yeah.
that because
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
can't go on the orders. And like right now, say he gets orders next week. We're screwed like at that point. Like it's on my dime or I stay here. We own this. Well, he owns this house, so I could stay here. But then again, why did I move here? We're gonna be long distance again.
Yeah.
And it's just it's all that of like, okay, well, I have a career here. I'm gonna give up that career. And move on my own dime. Like it's just there's so much the military doesn't let you do as a girlfriend that it forces you to get married whether you're ready or not, and then that stigma comes along of the divorces and the young marriages because people feel boxed in because they don't have anything to count on as just
Yeah,
a
it's less the
girlfriend or
benefits,
boyfriend.
it's more the to be together situation. It
Yeah.
really ends up being that
Yeah.
because I don't care about TRICARE. Like I've never been one that goes to the doctor
Yeah.
unless I am very sick. So like I didn't care whether I had insurance. You know, we could have rented our own apartment. That was fine. But it was like like Ashley was saying, he couldn't move out of the barracks. That was not an option unless we were married.
Yeah.
And
Or he was a certain rank, but most of those, like I think it's E3. I think you have to be like an E4,
yeah,
like in the army.
that ability to get out and
Yeah,
make
I think you're right.
friends. Like the whole thought of that was impossible. I could not until continue to live in Colorado while he was in Hawaii. It was absurd. Like, how are we going to have
Yeah.
any sort of relationship? Because his long distance is one thing, but like overseas long distance was so hard on us. I mean, we did it for 9 months, but just like there was the communication was completely lacking because he was up at different hours because the time difference is massive between Colorado and Hawaii. And so just trying to live like that for nearly a year, and it was just like, no,
I should
moving
also
there.
note that, like, but when we dealt with that, though, like, social media was just becoming a thing. Like, you know, Facebook, when we were both in that time frame of when we were with our soldiers, Facebook was still only for people who in college. Like, you had to prove that you were in a certain college to use it. So it was still just email. I mean, we had email and Skype. I think Skype was really big, like, during that time.
That's what just didn't really do technology. So it was just like texting, and that was not working. So it was like I literally got on a plane. I didn't tell my mom because like we'd gotten engaged that spring when I went out there to visit him. And then I got on a plane, he paid for the ticket, and I was like, well, I'm not coming back. It's a one-way thing. We're gonna figure this out. I stayed with someone that he worked with in their house until we were able to go to the court and get married. And then there was a whole process which takes weeks. And we were poor, tiny little 19-year-olds. Like we couldn't afford to stay in the hotel or anything. So we stayed in his friend's kid's bedroom for weeks while we were waiting to get on the housing list and like all of that chaos. It's like we didn't want that like that. That's not how we wanted it to go, but we also didn't want to not be together either.
Yeah, I think to give the boy credit, like I don't want to rush a marriage either. Even though we've known each other our whole lives, I still like each of our relationship. But I personally don't know if I don't know if he's grasped the fact that like he could move at any point. I mean, he knows he's not naive. He's well aware of the military, how the military works. But he's been by himself in the military for so long that I sometimes wonder if it just slips his mind, like, oh, you live here with me, we're together. He doesn't think about the possibilities of like, oh, next week he could get orders somewhere and it's too late. We're not married. So it's like, okay, we've lived together for a year and a half. But when we got back together, I drove down to South Carolina and told him how I felt. We wasn't no lead up. It was, I think I still like you. I still want this. I want to make it happen, and I want to do it for real. Like I'm not dating you to date you. I'm dating you because I want to be with you now. Like I'm at a point in my life where I'm ready to settle down. If you are too, let's make it happen. And we did. So now I feel like saying like, oh, I want to wait for the perfect time. I want to make sure we're right. I want to wait. You almost can't at this point because we have no idea what's going to happen next week. And like I said, when those lists for Korea was coming out, I was like, if you're on there, I just moved here 3 months ago. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? So I don't know. I see both sides of like the waiting, but I don't want to rush marriage. But at this point, you never know what could happen.
Well, and you've been together for so
military.
long, you are missing out on those benefits to the extent of like, if you did get pregnant, like you don't have the benefits that you would get through TRICARE or.
And like, we know it's working. Like, yes, I know things can work and not work. But again, we already live together. We know each other's families. Like, there's not really much other firsts or things, experiences of like, the people who, they always say, see your spouse angry, see them sick, see them in every light. We've pretty much done everything you could do up to this point of seeing them, other than having a kid or, we've gone through deaths. We've gone through, we both had COVID at the same time. We've gone through things. We've gone through a deployment. It worked. There was no cheating. There was no distrust. It worked. So at this point, it's like we're missing out on things. And again, the paranoia and the anxiety of me is scared of what could the military do, and I don't have the ability to do anything about it.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that would change if you did get married. It doesn't that way.
But at that point, we're married, so I can go with, or I can like.
Yeah, I mean, you can go with, but like you still deal with the like I'm giving up my career,
Yeah, but now I still have to worry about the sending myself. Like that's the biggest thing is not knowing and not being able to go. Or not being able to do anything because I'm just a girlfriend. I'm not recognized by the military. That's a big one. And
I think you're kind of like in a different boat because like, like I know like a lot of, at least like, because I'm an FRG, which is like a key spouse with the Air Force here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my fiancés or girlfriends, they still live at home. Some of them are here locally. They met them locally type of girls. I think it's really different when you are living with that soldier and you are a girlfriend and your whole life can be completely like thrown in like a 360 if he gets orders or if he gets deployed and you don't have that support of your family. So I definitely think that like every person, we talk about this all the time. Like you have to do what's best for you. Like if that means living with your soldier is the best for you and you guys are doing a great thing, like that's great. Or if it's living at home in a long distance for a short time, it's great. You just have to do what's best for your guys' relationship and what's best for you. We say that about for spouses who want to go home during deployments. Like you have to do what's best for you. I've always kind of said, don't uproot your life every single time something kind of major changes in your routine, like a deployment, because it's just harder to get back into the swing of things. But, everybody's different and every military relationship is different. So also don't compare yourself to other people.
Yeah, that's a hard thing for this. There's always the stigma of the military and the military spouses and the dependas and, the people who are overly eager. And you hear all about the people you all hear about the spouses who are the traditional, the one stigma, the stereotypical of it. And people always say, I don't want to be another like stereotypical spouse. But there is no stereotypical spouse because there's so many variations of people. Just because somebody goes home during a deployment, that doesn't make them the same type of spouse as somebody else who goes home for the deployment. Everybody's different, doing their own things. And you have the bad eggs, of course, in every career, every field, everything of the people who marry for the benefits, or they bring down the name of, a military spouse and what the true supportive of it is. And I don't like talking about myself with the military very publicly often because it's not my job. It's not my life, but at the same time it's our family's life, so I have to talk about it to an extent. It's so hard because people are so prepared to call you a dependo, or they're so hard to jump down your throat of like stereotypes, and it's like I'm not the one serving. This isn't my story, this isn't my life, but at the same time it is, because it has to be. When you're members in the military, it consumes your whole life whether you want it to or not. And that's a hard thing for people to understand, for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was really glad to hear that you had found somebody as a key spouse who was inclusive, because I think that that's also the very big stigma on the other side of people just don't include the girlfriends. You're not married, you don't count, you shouldn't be getting like being around, like you shouldn't get the information.
That irks me so much.
So sad to me.
It irks me so much because like you are just entitled to the information as anyone else. If the soldier says, I want you to know what that information is, that's their choice. And so it shouldn't matter on rank or anything like that. And I hate that stigma.
And I think
Like,
it's
it
just sad,
bothers me.
especially when it comes to the family groups, because I get like why you can't have benefits of being on like the commissary and all that. Like I get that, but like
Yeah.
to be able to be interacting with people who are deployed at the same time, to be able to just have the community where you can reach out to someone when you're having a hard time, because you still deal with the shit. You still have to do the deployments. You still have to deal with the finances. You still, especially living with him, are dealing with everything that he goes through him.
Yeah.
And so it's not fair for people, even though like you haven't been, I mean, you have been, and you're not like the brand new girlfriend, but like you should still get that support. I understand the benefits, but the support should still be available to whoever that is in their lifestyle. Because if you want them to become married or you want those relationships to last, excluding that person who's important to them from the military community is not going to grow their relationship. That's going to
Yeah.
make it so
Yeah.
hard.
I've gotten very lucky in the sense of like my key spouse group is welcoming. To be fair, I haven't gone to any of the events. Like I did it to myself. Like I don't go to the group hangouts. But on the other side of it, I'm 24 and I don't have kids. And a lot of the events, our kids are coming and it's a little bit older. A lot of my friends are older than me, but the key spouses are in their 30s, which I can get along with, but I don't always want to go hang out with kids and people who are a different age range than me.
Yeah.
It's just not something I always want to do, but they've been very welcoming and I don't have anything bad to say about my key spouse or my squadron wives because they have been very welcoming. And then I have my small set of friends who all their husbands are in. And then it gets to the point where because I'm young and a girlfriend, I feel so juvenile calling a girlfriend. I hate it because it's like when you say girlfriend, it's like, oh, I see her like twice a week and we go out for dinner. Like, no, like we're like adulting this shit. Like
Significant others. Yeah, for
I
sure.
live with him. Like I wash his underwear. Like I think I deserve like done. Like you know what I mean. Like when you say girlfriend when you're young, it sounds so juvenile. And just breaking out of that, like no, like we've been together for a while. Like this is like we're doing this. It's not just like we're testing the waters.
Well, and I
I'm
think it's
in
important.
this.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say there are trends. There was trends of everyone get married really young. And then now there's a trend that, people are waiting. Like they may be partners for years and then they're getting married later down, like when they're ready to. Like there's no rush to do it. But like, we've all
Weddings are also so expensive.
Oh yeah, we didn't even
Like
have one. We ended up eloping. So
so expensive.
I mean, technically we had it planned. We postponed it. We eloped. We did like the courthouse. We went to the beach and got married, and we were going to do it again. But then military life happens, and you can never really fully, especially we got married in 2010. So that was still kind of the height of like Iraq and Afghanistan war. They were still deploying 12 months at a time. So it really depends on also what's happening as well. Like, are you guaranteed to get leave during your wedding week? You may not be. So especially if you're someone who has a soldier who's already in it and you're not going through being married before they join the services. So I think it's
like when that whole thing happened with Russia and Poland.
Yep.
Like back in last spring, we were on like 72-hour watch. So it was like, are you coming home from work today or are you leaving? Like bag checks were happening every week for just like possible emergency leavings. Like the jets were being prepped and he wasn't sure if he was going or not. And I was like, that was one of the last times recently that I've panicked about not being married. Of like,
yeah,
and I'm not part of this really.
We here have been a part of the rapid activation. So my husband, like, if you've been a listener, that he's rapidly deployed within has had a 2-hour recall notice 3 times in the last 2-3 years since 2020. So the last 2.5 years. And I could not imagine doing that as a girlfriend or a fiance.
Yeah, it was stressful. It was a lot. And thank God he didn't go then. He went a few months later and we had about 2 to 3 months notice before he left. But I was like, oh my God, we're not married. Like, so now I kind of like jokingly put a rule into place, but I'm kind of serious. I would like a ring on the finger before the next contract's signed. Like, I don't need a marriage, but I at least want to like fiance status for my own mental health if you're going to sign another contract. Because I think we're stupid, first of all, not to. We've been there for so long. We know things are working. Already live here. It's kind of stupid not to if you're going to sign another 4 years. At this point, we're not like second week dating. But at the same time, like, I don't want to rush him. But again, August of this year is when his contract ends. So that's plenty of time.
For those who are listening who are girlfriends, You can be engaged for, I'm like as close as I can to my mic. You can be engaged for as long as you want. It is not a
Yeah.
ring on my finger and you are married within a year. You can
No.
be engaged for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Heck, I've known someone who was engaged for 8 years and then they finally got married because they were just, I mean,
Yeah.
a family member. They were just content living together. Now they weren't military, so they didn't have all of that to deal with. But just because you get engaged, yes, it gives you a peace of mind saying like, yes, okay, we're committing, like we are moving to that
Exactly.
next step to get married. And it's kind of a peace of mind, like you're saying, like, I want that on my ring just so for my mental
Yeah.
health.
I joined this relationship when your contract was already signed for 6 years. I came into this relationship knowing you were serving a 6 year contract, not knowing what's happening after that. But now that 6 years is up and there's up in the air, I'm now, I don't think I necessarily come priority because, again, military was his career first, but it's not just you anymore. So, like, you have to think about the fact that now it's you and me and our 3 dogs and our house and our, like, all of that. We have our own family we've created. And I used to work in the wedding industry before I moved. I worked for a wedding photographer. I used to model wedding dresses. I've been involved in the wedding community for a while. So, yes, I want that wedding. But I also know how expensive it is because I've been in the industry. And I know the military recognizes marriage, not Beyonce's. I understand that. But I kind of need that commitment from him at, like, you're signing another contract to the military. Well, where's your contract to me in a sense? Like, where's your commitment of saying, I can't control what the military does to us, but I can control what you and I do. I just think that's, again, I'm never going to force him into it. I'm not trying to make an ultimatum. I'm not that kind of person. But I think it's a fair thing. We've talked about it. So fingers crossed by August.
Yeah, I think it is that's a fair bargain. And I would guess signing a new contract, that chance of him moving is going to go up exponentially anyway.
Right?
So to be
Yeah.
on those orders, because I mean, what if something like Europe comes up? It is such a great experience. This is my second tour here and we love it. And I can imagine if he
Yeah.
was like, I got orders, like we'll see if we can get married when I come
Yeah.
back on
We
leave.
just
And
we just looked over his like dream list of like his like if he could pick his assignment list kind of thing, which we know isn't always how it works, but we looked at it recently and like I put my opinion in. Like we put like opinions for us down with like Alaska and Italy and Korea and like whatever. Like we put where we would want to go, not where he would want to go. So how am I supposed to go with you over there if we're not married?
Okay,
I
so you're
can't.
gonna have to be married if you want to go to
So
Alaska or
like,
Italy.
yeah, exactly. I know that. I'm not naive. I'm well aware of that fact. So it's like, okay, why are we looking at our dream list if it's just you on the order? Like that's not how this works.
because that would be awful to try to
So
plan. You'd either have to do like a wedding the
yeah,
week of the move, kind of like getting out and go, or
yeah.
yeah, wait for him to come back and have a wedding, which would be
It's
insane.
just it's just crazy. I never thought I was gonna be like a military like spouse, girlfriend. Like I never saw it in my cards. Like I said, we dated for about a year in high school. Things happened. Next thing I was dating other people. He's had one or two like relatively serious girlfriends. Like I've been in like long-term relationships before, like between the times. So it was never in my head of like, oh, eventually I'm going back. It was just it happened. And I'm so grateful for how our relationship redeveloped. Like, I was in a low place in my life. I had lost a close family member to me, and he stepped up and he was that person. And so I feel like I'm doing everything I can to step up and be that person for him throughout the military because I missed out on the stuff he went through before me. This deployment wasn't hard. It was hard for the distance, but it wasn't scary. He was in Saudi Arabia. But when he was in Afghanistan, I've heard all about how scary it was. And he went through some really traumatic things. And I'm devastated that he had to go through it alone and that he didn't have me or a person there to really support him other than his family who did amazing, but he didn't have that person. And so it's hard to support somebody for the military knowing that you're not recognized in the military. It's a hard thing to come to terms with of I want to be here for my person. I'm going to do everything I can for my person. He's the one actively serving, not me. It's not our rank. It's not any of that bullshit. It's you. But yet at the same time, the people that I'm trying to support you with don't even recognize me as who I am in your life and as how supportive and how big of a part of my life I am. And that's a hard thing mentally to process as somebody in that point and knowing that like you don't technically matter to your significant other's work. It doesn't matter to them. And I don't have kids, so that doesn't matter either. And it's hard to
Well,
process at times.
I think that's really great. And that's why we had you on, and we wanted to have a girlfriend on the show, was to kind of speak for that silent part of the community, because the military family should be inclusive to everybody. We've talked to military moms before, which is also kind of falls in that same category. Like when they're single, they still get that information. Those single soldiers, they generally are the point of contact as the mom, but once they get married, they just become that invisible part of the military community who, if they don't have a relationship with the spouse, also just loses all the contact and the information that was being given to them from the beginning of their kids' career. So this was nice to have a different perspective of, hey, like we're here and we feel like we should still be supported from the community, and maybe some of the spouses who have in the past overlooked the girlfriends and kind of just pushed that to the side will maybe hear this episode and be like, hey, how can I support you? I know you're part of our group. Can we start getting you to come to events? Can we,
Well,
even
and
if
they
it's
were
we
all
just
there
talk
at
to you
that
more?
They were all there at some point. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe they were with their soldier beforehand, but like their experience isn't any different than yours experience. So like there really shouldn't be a like divide down the line between
And
the
I
two.
I understand like when it's like a new girlfriend, like, okay, how long is this one gonna last? Like I get it, of like the people who get in relationships quick and then they, get married quick, or they get out, or the people who go through girls or guys quickly. I get that you don't want to necessarily bring everybody in if they're not serious. But at a certain point, you have to look at the writing on the wall and see, okay, this person's doing whatever they can to get involved to support their airmen or their military member, male or female. And so we should support them back. If a girlfriend or boyfriend is actively trying to get information, actively trying to get included, there's no reason to stop them from being included. I can understand, again, if they're not wanting to be, or you don't know them because they don't come around. I get maybe not knowing what to do. But if they're actively trying, let them in. We're trying out here.
Well, thank you for coming on. It's been really nice. It was nice to kind of step back into my history and think like, wow,
Yeah.
I do remember being that, like, it's been a long time ago, but I remember the struggle and the long distance and the just why we rushed into the things that we did, because we didn't have that support that we needed in our life. So it's good to see that you guys are out there still. There's girlfriends, and that you want to be so supportive. I think that that's super amazing that you're kind of trying to be active in the community. So I'm glad that you came on. It was wonderful to meet you. So we're excited that you guys will get to know a little bit more of our community.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate you guys having me on. It was fun. And like I said, I think girlfriends should get a place too.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we will be back with a new episode in February, whatever that ends up being. We will be back with some resources for entrepreneurs next month, as well as some other relationship advice stuff that we're going to be talking to another fantastic viewer for. So I hope that you guys have a great end of the January, and we will see you in February. And as we like to say, rock up, buttercup.